Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We're at the Tisch WNET studio in the heart of Lincoln Center. It is our honor to welcome the Reverend Al Sharpton to our studio. It's the first time you're in this studio?
In this studio, yep.
You've been in a lot of studios, right?
One or two.
You've been in your studio every night at right down the street.
Yeah.
At
30 Rock. Yeah.
30 Rock, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation on every night from 6 to 7.
Right.
And also the founder and president of the National Action Network. Reverend, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
It's a fascinating time, which we're talking at the end of June 2015. This program will air after. Talk to us about the horrific events of what happened in South Carolina.
Well, the morning of the day that it happened, I was in Washington. I was a guest at the installation of Loretta Lynch, the first African-American woman to be the Attorney General of the United States. And I sat there right behind her family, and I felt how it was such an awesome day seeing the first black woman installed Attorney General by the first Latina Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, on Frederick Douglass's Bible, first African-American president of the United States looking on. Doesn't get any better for this for a civil rights activist. Get on the plane, come back, go by National Action Network, go do my radio show, my TV show, go home, get into bed. And the head of our South Carolina chapter calls me and says, 9 people were just killed at Mother Emanuel, a church I've been to frequently, including Reverend Pinckney, the pastor, who 2 months before had stood with me in Charleston at a vigil we were having for the police shooting death of Walter Scott. So in one day, Steve, I saw how far we've come as a country. Black president, black attorney general, female, Latina Supreme Court, and how far we still have to go with these racial slayings. I think the good news is we have come that far. The bad news is that we still have to deal with the fact that racism still exists. We've made a lot of progress, but we're not there yet.
Reverend, you know, in anticipation of having you on this program, there's so many things going through my mind, so many things I want to ask you, which is why we're allotting as much time as we have. But the one thing that I'm curious about is, in a recent Gallup poll, it talked about how whites and blacks, statistically, view race and race relations, and it couldn't be further apart. Why do you believe there is such a gap, a disparity between how blacks traditionally and today view race and race relations and whites? Because we do.
I think that a lot of it is that we talk at each other more than to each other, and we live in different realities. And people do not understand each other's reality, so therefore we get defensive or offensive rather than understanding. So, for example, if there is a police shooting.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
The reality is that in the black community, it is perceived as more of the same. In the white community, oh, you're against law enforcement, you're picking on cops, you're just stirring up the pot, rather than understanding that, yes, there's a criminal element that scares some in the white community, but yes, that you have these continued abuses in the black community by some in law enforcement that we don't see in other communities. And all of them are not right, but all of them are not wrong either. Everybody can't be fantasizing. And I think that we never try to meet in the middle and say, well, let's talk about this.
You know, I appreciate that point, Reverend, but it often strikes me that one of the struggles we have, even though I've got to agree, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and was a very young child during the Newark riots that you know very well. And that affected my view of the world and it affected the view of, I'm sure, my contemporaries who happened to be black and I went to school with, in different ways. But I will also tell you that I often struggle and wonder why we can't look at a particular situation that does involve a black youth or an adult, whether it be Eric Garner or whomever, and a cop who happens to be white, and try to look at the individual situation as best we can instead of, quote, another incident involving a white cop and a black man, young or older. And that's one of the things I struggle with, because I sit there and say, I'm trying to look at the individual situation and not the pattern. Do you look at the pattern?
I think that the fact is, if you look, as you say, we're talking in late June.
Sure.
In the last year, just last year, you have Eric Garner, the chokehold case in Staten Island.
Which is hard to defend in any level.
All right. Before we could get out of that, 3 weeks later in August, we have Michael Brown in Ferguson. Then a few weeks after that, we have North Charleston. Then a few weeks after that. So it's on and on and on.
But they're not the same case, Reverend.
They're not the same case, but it's the same pattern of they're dismissed. People are said, what are you talking about? And they're all on videotape. They're all a tape. So you
but
can't say...
Reverend, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
They don't all show the same thing.
They don't all show the same thing, but the same pattern of dismissal is, I think, what
the
causes
police are dismissed.
The police are, in terms of the concerns of the community, is dismissed. Let's get to a core issue that ties together your question.
Sure.
Why do people call people like me? Because they feel like no one will hear them, and they want somebody to make them not be ignored. So people will always complain to guys like you, Steve. Why is Reverend Al raised in hell? He just wants publicity. That's exactly right. That's why people call me, because they don't want people to ignore them. Do I want publicity? That's exactly what I want. On the cases, on the issues that I want. So they see that as a negative. That's why Eric Garner's family called me. That's why Michael Brown's family called me. That's why they call me in these situations, because they feel nobody's paying attention.
But at the same time, Reverend, point well taken. But there are many who look at certain situations like the Eric Garner situation in Staten Island with the chokehold and ask themselves, how could that possibly happen? Maybe you don't, because you've seen it before from a certain perspective, and it's indefensible on any level that I look at it from those cops, no matter what is said. I'm not a cop.
Yeah.
I'm not black, but I can't defend it. But I also say this, there are many who do ask themselves, why is it that Reverend Sharpton never in any of these cases says, you know what, I've thought about this, and I can understand why the cop did what he did, and in this case, I choose not to get involved.
Well, all they have to do is come to National Action Network. I turn down cases every day.
So we only know about the ones you choose to be involved in.
Why would I have a demonstration and say, I'm going to march on the family, I'm not taking your case?
No, Reverend, here's what I'm saying. There are some who do and would love to hear you say that the cop, be they white or black, have an incredibly difficult job, and sometimes you, in fact, choose to say, in that case, justified.
Let's say, Steve...
That doesn't make any sense to you?
Not only does it make sense, I do it. I speak every year at the police academy for the training. You ever see that on the news? No, because they don't want to cover that. I meet with the police commissioner. You ever see that on the news? They do not cover that. They only cover if there is a situation where we're questioning the police. The former police commissioner, Ray Kelly, who was the author of Stop and Frisk that I protested, every year has the academy training at the Apollo Theater. Every year he had me come speak. He said, Reverend Al, I don't agree, but I think you need to hear what he has to say about training. I think that Reverend Al is basically a guy that's concerned about his community.
Not a lot of coverage.
None. So I think that that's a problem. Just like there are people on the police side that do a lot of things in our community. We have a National Action Network, an anti-violence squad. We go out in the street, we call our group Occupy the Corner, because the gun violence, we're the ones disproportionately hurt. The police go out there with us. That's not covered. But I think that all of us, again, are victimized by those that sensationalize at each other rather than talking to each other.
Talk about sensationalize. Baltimore. I'm sure you had strong feelings, you expressed them. The violence in reaction to the violence.
Totally wrong. When I went to Baltimore, I have a chapter in Baltimore, and when I went to Baltimore, I went to defend the mayor, because I felt that
she was in a tough spot.
She was in a tough spot, and for people to go out in the streets and rip off the CVS, rip off things that, what does grabbing some sneakers have to do with getting justice for a guy? I preached the funeral of Michael Brown and Eric Garner. I denounced the funeral at the funeral during the sermons, any violence. Some of the way left wings denounce me. What is he lecturing the people that are rioting for? Because not only are they hurting our community, they hurt the cause that they claim that they're concerned about. The families did not want violence. The family wanted redress, as I give credit to the families in South Carolina, which was not a police case. I'm talking about the case of the 9.
You've evolved on so many levels, not just physically. You're much healthier. You were talking about your early morning workouts,
right.
your diet, everything.
I work out every morning around 5.
And I would argue your diet's probably not the same.
No, not quite. No, I'm a vegetarian now, and I'm very cautious of what I eat.
Are you mellower?
I don't think I'm mellower. I think I'm more clear in what I'm saying. I think as you grow in age, you are more sensitive that your message is being clear. I still lead the march. Who led the marches in Staten Island and in a lot of these cases? I'm still doing what I always did, but I'm just more clear about why I'm doing them.
So when you look back, and you get asked this all the time, and if I didn't ask it, I don't feel like I'd be doing my job.
Go ahead.
And the National Action Network is doing important things. When you do look back at the Brawley case, do you say to yourself, I could have and should have handled things differently in the Tawana Brawley case?
I've said very openly that if I had to do Tawana Brawley again, I would do it, but I would do it differently. One, I would not be the spokesman for the victim, because when you're a spokesman for a victim, you have to say what they say. I would say, wait a minute, the organization wants to see a thorough, full, clear, fair investigation, and that's where I speak. I'm not the spokesman for the Gardner family or the Michael Brown family or any of these cases. I'm the spokesman for National Action Network, seeking they get a fair and just end. And I wouldn't make personal attacks. I think when you get into ugly personal name calling, that you reduce the value of what you're saying. And let's face it, you're going for the cheap soundbite. And I think this stuff is too serious to be handled cheaply.
Talk about serious. The National Action Network, very involved in voting rights issues. And you're very clearly concerned about, as we move into the 2016 presidential race, congressional races, Senate races, about this issue because...
I'm very concerned that when you have the changing of voting rules, ending early voting days, state of Florida, state of Georgia, around the country, about 14 states that were not affected last time will be affected this time. So why are we cutting down on days people can vote early? Why are we stopping that you can leave church on Sunday, the Sunday before an election, and go and vote? What is the reason for that? Then the strict new voter ID laws that change in different states. Some states you have to have state-sponsored photo ID, like a driver's license or passport. Well, a lot of seniors don't drive. A lot of seniors don't have passports. Why are we doing that when there is no evidence of fraud with voter ID? So people say to me, well, Reverend Al, you don't believe people should have ID to vote? Absolutely they should. But why don't we have the ID we always had? Why do we need a new ID now? And when there is no fraud, the Justice Department said there's 0.0003% fraud. So it's like a solution looking for a problem. I think the country is healthier when everyone that wants to vote can vote and when everyone does not have impediments.
Barack Obama,
I think Barack Obama...
1 to 10. 1 to 10.
1 to 10? I'd give him an 8.
What stops him from being a 10?
Only because he's not finished yet, and I got to give myself room for, in case he messes up.
Is that the only reason, Reverend?
Yeah. I supported Obama.
I know you did.
And I supported him for specific reasons, and he's done those reasons. You know, people say to me in New York, why do you like de Blasio? Because he's doing what I supported him for. I mean, the people tend to like the people that they supported if they do what they supported them
Funny
for.
how that works that way.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton?
I'm not decided. I think Hillary's more good than bad.
Okay.
But I have not sat with undecided what I'm doing.
I have to ask you this one. I ask certain questions, this leadership question to people who have been out there in leadership positions in tense situations. Biggest leadership lesson you learned over the many years you've been out front?
One is you got to take your emotions out of it. If you become...
You?
Yeah. You got to take your... In terms of... No, not your passion, not your drive, but you've got to learn to deal with your temperament. I've had to really work on not being as highly emotional as I was.
You were a mentee of Don King's.
Well, no, I knew Don King. I was a mentee. I was raised in the Civil Rights Movement by Jesse Jackson.
Okay.
And Don King and I knew each other well, but Don was selling something. I'm trying to stand for something. And
Well
I think
said.
you've got to deal with your emotions if you're going to be effective.
Passion without the...
Passion without taking things personal and without tit for tat. Let your passion drive your cause rather than your cause try to catch up with your passion.
Biggest misconception about, for some, a few seconds left, about the Reverend Al Sharpton?
That you get personal gain out of this. I never had health insurance till I was in my 50s. I mean, there's no gain. People say, oh, he's in these cases for money. What money? I mean, first of all, many of the cases, police cases, they sue, they may get money 3 or 4 years down the road. So let me get this right, Steve. Something happens to somebody you know. I say, I'll take your case in 3 or 4 years from now, maybe you'll give us, what, $20,000? Now that I do radio and TV, I make that.
You know real money now.
Yeah, so I mean, what are you talking about?
Real quick, where can people check out your show on MSNBC? What time?
It's 6 o'clock Eastern every day on MSNBC, 6 to 7 p.m.
Reverend Al Sharpton,
And then
thank you for
get
joining
you some
us.
coffee, step and watch Steve.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate
I learned
it.
that from Don King.
Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you, Reverend.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, the New Jersey Education Association, NJIT, Barnabas Health, MagnaCare, New Jersey Sharing Network, and by the Mental Health Association in New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.